Recently I've been in the middle of a role transfer rebuilding my champion pool for the mid lane. Personally, I feel as though I have learned top lane to its fullest, mastering every mechanic that it has to offer. Now, when learning a new role, you always have to rebuild a new champion pool. You can't just recycle other champions from other roles into your new role. Now, I'm keeping my pool very small, only picking up Kassadin, Cassiopeia, Orianna, and Syndra to start off. Today we're going to be going over what kind of advantages you get for having a small pool like this. Now this is going to be a little bit different than our typical videos as it touches more on philosophy as opposed to anything else. Now, I want to make it completely clear that this is not my philosophy on the game and it is more of an adapted version of Apto's philosophy. Apto is a player who has gotten rank 1 on the Korean and Chinese servers multiple times over. This is something that he practices very heavily. He keeps as small of a champion pool as possible, and he will move on as soon as these champions get nerfed. Apto is very talented, and he has the ability to play pretty much any champion in the game, but he will only stick to a few very simple champions. Now, before we get too far into the video, I'd like to remind you to check out our website, GameLeap.com. There we have hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses, so if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check it out using the link in the description below and sign up today. Now, let's get started right away with how you develop this small pool. Now obviously, the first step is to pick which champions you want in your pool. One tricking is okay, but 3 to 4 champions is generally a safer way to approach this pool. With 3 to 4 champions, you can avoid counter picks, you won't get banned out nearly as often, and you will have a response to fit your own team comp 90% of the time. If you're one tricking, this is just not nearly as likely to happen. You might get banned out or counter picked right away. Now you might be thinking, but Panther, how do I pick these champions for this pool? So many different champions can be played for my role. How do I know which ones are going to be fit for me? Now, this is a very good question, and a lot of people go about picking their champion pool the wrong way. See, what a lot of people will do is they will pick their champion pool of 3 to 4 champions to be the exact same in how they play. For example, a top laner that enjoys playing divers might pick up Renekton, Riven, and Kled. The issue here is your entire champion pool only fills one very small niche out of all of the top laners that you could possibly play. Assassins, tanks, bruisers, it only fills the one small bruiser diver niche. Your champion pool should offer variety to your play. I'll give you an example with my pool. The pool that I'm building currently consists of Kassadin, Cassiopeia, Orianna, and Syndra. Syndra is an early game control mage that focuses on singling out one target in a team fight and killing them. Now her team fighting is not bad by any means, but her main focus is to take one enemy champion out of the team fight with her ultimate. Her single target burst is pretty much unmatched by any other control mage. Kassadin, on the other hand, is the polar opposite. He plays lane phase very safely, looking to farm and get levels and scale into the late game, where he can become a hyper-mobile assassin. Filling a completely different niche, I could pick Orianna, something that is going to give utility to my teammates and back up as a secondary engage tool. Each of these champions fill a different niche that are going to be more or less appropriate for certain team comps. Now, it is definitely harder to learn different champions with different playstyles because you have to learn the entire playstyle on top of the champion. But if you do keep the pool low, the playstyle will come pretty naturally as you are learning the champion. It is very important that your champion pool does not consist of nearly identical champions. For example, a champion pool of Zed, Qiyana, and Talon in the mid lane is pretty much no different from just one tricking any of those 3 champions. You are more likely to get one of these champions in every single one of your games, but you're going to have games where these picks just aren't the pick for your team. Now, as for which specific champions you want to put into your pool, that's completely up to you. Basically, whatever you find fun. Just make sure that these champions are not too similar, because then you will not be seeing nearly as much success as you could be. Now, once you have a general idea of which champions you want to be picking in your ranked games, a pool of 3 or 4, You have to figure out when specifically you're going to pick each individual champion. In order to do this, you need to understand the win and loss conditions on each and every champion. For example, it would be a mistake for me to lock in Kassadin into Talon mid and Jarvan jungle because I'm going to be bullied out of lane, I'm not going to be able to get that gold and EXP that I need, and I'm largely going to be useless to my team. In this example, Syndra or Orianna would be a much better pick for me because these champions are going to be able to survive the lane even if the jungler comes mid, get that gold, and they might even be able to bully Talon out of lane. Now, I'm not going to go over the win and loss conditions on my champion pool specifically because that just isn't really going to be helpful for you guys. Understanding what your win and loss conditions require you to understand the power spikes on your champions, when they're going to be most useful, and why. The win condition is typically when you hit those power spikes if the enemy team is unable to deal with them. The loss condition, on the other hand, is anything that would deny you from getting these power spikes or something that is going to be able to deal with your power spike even once you have it. Let's use Qiyana for another example. Qiyana power spikes when she has a lot of armor pen and lethality. However, if Qiyana's team is full AD and she's playing against something like Malphite top, jungle Sejuani, and support Taric, then she's not really going to be useful even if she does hit her power spikes. Win conditions are not only based on your champion, you have to take the other champions on your team and the enemy team into account. Let's talk about the win conditions involving the rest of your teammates, because this one is a little bit harder to understand sometimes. Teammate-based win conditions typically exist when you are picking a utility pick for yourself. For example, when I pick Orianna from my pool, the win condition changes based on what champions I have on my team. For example, if I have an Alistar on my team while playing Orianna, the win condition is to put ball on Alistar, wait for Alistar to go in with his WQ combo, and then use my ultimate to get as many members of the enemy team as possible, and just one-shot the whole team if you can. However, if I have a hypercarry Twitch with a Lulu support, the win condition changes from putting the ball on the engaged support to putting the ball on the ADC and keeping them alive. Usually when playing heavy utility champions like this, your win condition is going to change from time to time depending on what your comp is looking like. Now, the amount of win conditions that you have going into a game is going to differ. Sometimes you draft a comp so perfect and straightforward that you only have one clear win condition, but it's very easy to achieve. Sometimes you draft a very cluttered comp with no clear win condition, but you could win in multiple different ways. Try to understand as many different win conditions for each individual champion in your pool as possible. I don't want to pigeonhole myself into only picking Kassadin into Echo, only picking Syndra if they're playing a melee, and only picking Orianna if I have a hypercarry, because then there's just going to be so many games where I don't have a pick that works. This is something that you need to look out for as well. You don't want to be pigeonholing yourself into only picking certain champions into certain things. Something that really helped me when I was new and developing my very first champion pool is I would have a notepad up on my second monitor. On this notepad, I would have a list of bans that I would target no matter what happened. This was usually 4 or 5 different bans, so I didn't run out and just end up banning something random. I really wanted to be sure that I was banning something that was going to be useful to me in every single game. Now, the next thing on this notepad was a list of champions that I play. Under each champion, I had a few notes on what they were successful into and what they struggled against. For example, my notes on Renekton might look something like this. Early game champion, struggles into Pantheon and Teemo, falls off later on into the game. Win condition, getting an early lead, extending that through mid game, and trying to get one good team fight off to extend my lead to the rest of my team. Loss condition, being shut down or losing lane. Lane matchups to avoid, Jax, Pantheon, Teemo. Heavily favored matchups, Irelia, Riven, Yasuo. With notes like these, I could check what the enemy team is locking in, think of what might be good out of my champion pool to play into that, and then check on my notes to make sure that it has worked in the past. Now, this is not something that you have to do, but it is something that I strongly recommend that you try if you are learning new champions. Once you have a feel for your whole champion pool, you won't really need the notepad anymore, and you'll be able to tell just based on their picks what the appropriate pick for yourself is going to be. When you are newer, some of the smaller nuances of each champion might slip your mind, and these are things that you are going to want to take note of and make sure that you have written down. Now, the last and most important thing that you need for this strategy is patience. It's going to take you a while to learn new champions, and that is okay. It's completely normal. Try not to get frustrated and work on one mechanic at a time until you are comfortable with all of them. If you do this for all of your champions, you understand their win and loss conditions and when you should be picking them and when you shouldn't, then you're going to be seeing a lot of success using this strategy in solo queue. With a diverse enough pool, you're going to have a shot at winning any game. Playing this way also introduces strategy into the pick and ban phase, which is something that is very, very fun for me personally. There's something that's just satisfying about locking in a godlike team comp and getting what feels like a free win. Now, that's all that we've got for today's video on how you should be building your champion pool. If you haven't already, make sure to check out our website, GameLeap.com. There we have hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses, so if that is something that interests you, make sure to sign up today. I've checked out a lot of the content on there myself, and I can honestly say that our website is one of the best learning tools out there. So if your main goal is to rank up in League, check us out using the link in the description. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.